When we did the planning for this event, what I'm going to do right now sounded like a good idea. As I was sitting over there watching all the speakers finish up their presentations, I said, oh my God, what did I get myself into? So first of all, before I jump into the presentation, I want to just take a few minutes. Has today been an awesome day? So can I see a show of hands here? How many people in the room are parents? We have quite a number here. So you will understand the feeling that I'm going through right now. When we have children and we watch them do things in life, we get amazed constantly. It's their first words, the first steps that they take, their first date, their first, when they got their first driver's license, when they graduate high school or college. You know how you feel when those moments happen? How that pride just bursts through it. You just can't feel better. Sitting back around watching what's happened over today has been an amazing experience for me. I've watched Chris Cardo be the MC of this event and do a fantastic job. It's one of the hardest jobs ever to do is to MC an event like this. I think some of us saw him last year do this. I think he's grown tremendously from last year to this year. So Chris, can I get a round of applause for Chris? Amazing job. And I will say he wrote all his own jokes, so he did a really good job of making this entertaining as well. Then I had the pleasure of watching Chris Poe come up here and speak. Now, I've known Chris for a long time, and I remember at Atrion when Chris first started with us, he basically got thrown into the public speaking realm in the first 3 weeks of work at Atrion. My business partner, Charlie, was supposed to give a presentation. Something came up. He couldn't do it. He was looking for someone else to actually fill in for him. And he basically asked Chris, would you be willing to do it? Chris said, well, I've never spoken in public before, but I'll give it a try. He put himself out there. Now, watching him walk across the stage and present has been a totally amazing experience. And I think we've seen him grow from presentation to presentation year over year in the Always On forum. Then I watched Dave Ramsden. Isn't Dave Ramsden amazing? I expect Chris Poe to be amazing because he spoke in public a lot. He's been on stages like this many, many times in many forums. But Dave is a quiet, mild-mannered strategist, technician, very cerebral. He doesn't speak out a lot, but to watch him get on this stage and actually own the stage and share his personal stories and the things that he's experienced in life with such conviction is amazing. So can I get a round of applause for Chris and Dave? When we put this event together, I challenged my team. We started talking about this a little bit more than a year ago. I challenged them. I said, I want this event, our 5th event, to be totally amazing. I want to push the boundaries. I want to do something. I want to do things that don't typically happen in an event like this. And so I challenged our team to find interesting speakers that brought a different twist to what we're doing. And I think you guys will all agree that I don't think any of us were prepared for Amanda Palmer's presentation, were we? But I wanted to create something that challenged us to think about ourselves, our roles that we play in a different way. And for me, I think what Amanda Palmer did, she taught me in this session that it's okay to ask for help. But more importantly, I just don't ask for help. I got to be willing to give help in return. And I got to be willing to build relationships every step of the way. And I thought that was such a powerful message just for us as individuals. I also learned from us if we're IT, and you're IT director, VP, CIO, and you have to go to talk to someone about budgets, I think what you should do is get a white dress, wedding dress, stand on a box, put a box in front of you, and stand in front of your CFO's office and see if they'll donate to you to help pay for those projects you want to get done. Then we had Maysoon. Wasn't she unbelievable? Wasn't she totally amazing? And I met Charles not long ago, probably in the December timeframe. He spoke to a small group about his adventure. And I had the chance to talk to him after he gave his presentation. And I was just really excited about the fact that someone can take something like driving across country or riding across country or across Japan on a bike with their son and turn it into a career. Isn't it pretty amazing to follow that passion? So we brought all these people together to create this event today. And I want us to leave here thinking about one word. We talked about culture. That's what we came here to talk about. But what makes culture work, what makes amazing people, what makes us successful in life is a singular word, and that word is resilience. I think if you look at every speaker, there was an element of resilience in their conversation. Some people actually used the word. I think Maysoon used it. I know Charles used it. But this resilience, and when I look at resilience, there's three elements to resilience that make sense to me. The first is we have to understand that we face challenges. So we got to be able to identify those challenges that are in front of us. Number two is we have to have the conviction to be able to take those challenges head on, regardless of what we face with, or what the outcome could be. I think we heard, we don't know if we can cross the country of Japan, but let's try. And the third is actually overcoming that obstacle. Those three things make us resilient in life, and hopefully you can take that message away from today. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the images that you guys have selected. I caught a couple of them as we went through, but most of these we're going to kind of make up as we go on the fly, so hopefully you guys made it easy for me. So we all saw this image, I think, was in Chris Poe's presentation. To me, it's a remarkable picture. And when we think about this, Chris used it to talk about creating vision. But I think when we look at this, it's not just about creating vision, but it's achieving something remarkable. So what I want you to think about for yourself as we close down today is, what is your vision? Your companies probably have a vision. Your departments may even have a vision. Your project may have a vision of what you want to accomplish. But as you go through your personal life, what is your vision? What have you established for yourself to say, this is what I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years? Most of the time when we think about vision, people misunderstand what vision is really about. A lot of times people think it's about achieving something, to get something tangible I can hold in my hand. I want to complete my college degree. That's not vision, that's achieving a goal. So I heard Charles use the term BHAG. Does everyone know the term BHAG and what it means and what it stands for? It's a term that was coined by Jim Collins probably in the late 1990s in a book called Built to Last. It stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goals. And the idea behind this is companies need to look at themselves and say, 10 years from now, if I do a certain set of things correctly, I'll be 10 times more competitive than my competitors. So that's what the BHAG stands for. So one day, Jim Collins is giving a presentation. This is after Built to Last came out. He meets the founder, CEO of Starbucks. And during his conversation with the CEO of Starbucks, the guy says, Howard says, I know exactly what my BHAG is. And so Jim Collins says, oh, Howard, that's great. So what's your BHAG? And Howard says to him, he says, I want to have 2,000 stores by the year 2000. And Jim says, oh, that sounds pretty good. Well, how many stores do you have now? He says, we have 1,850. And Jim says, well, how many stores are you opening up a month? And the guy starts going through this, and he says, it sounds like you'll have all 2,000 in 10 months. And Howard says, oh, yes, that's exactly it. We'll achieve that milestone. And Jim looked at him and said, Howard, that doesn't sound very audacious. And they talked about it for a while. Howard walks away dejected. He failed. He didn't have his BHAG. Jim Collins then, a few years later, comes out and publishes Good to Great, talks about the BHAG again. He's at another event. And this time, after he's done speaking, Howard comes up to him and says, Jim, I know exactly what my BHAG is. So Jim is sitting there and he looks at him and says, what is it, 2,500 stores by next year? And Howard says, no. He says, we want to be the most recognized brand in the world. Isn't there a difference between those two? So in your life, what is your most recognized brand? What is it that you want to be? Where do you want to go in your life? It's not about getting a degree. What does that degree allow you to do? How are you going to change the world? How are you going to have an impact? How are you going to make a difference? So one of the things I look at in my life is I try to look at how I can actually define these things, and I have something I'm constantly working towards. You know what? Sometimes it's very easy. Sometimes it's very hard, like putting this event together. And the work that we went through in the last couple of weeks to make this happen is hard. And sometimes you say, why the hell am I doing this? But when you get through that, you're resilient, and you look at what you accomplish in your life, you'll accomplish a lot more. Okay. I would like to do this a lot. My wife won't let me, though. She thinks I'm crazy enough with all the other stuff that I do. So when I think about this, it's about being fearless, being able to take those risks, do things that get the adrenaline pumping. When I look at this, I kind of look at things that we can do in life that make our life more meaningful. When I think about some of the stuff that I heard that different speakers today talked about, whether it was May Soon and overcoming some of the challenges she faced, or Charles quitting his job and going on an adventure with his children and doing the things that he's done. It takes a level of courage to make that happen. Does anyone here know of a gentleman by the name of Viktor Frankl or heard of him? Raise your hand if you know of Viktor Frankl. Okay, so there's a few people in the room that have heard of Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl is someone I really admire. It's a person I study a lot of his work because, to me, it's a very important body of work for leaders. Viktor Frankl was a psychologist, neuroscientist in the World War II era. He lived in Austria, and he was Jewish. And just as the war was starting to break out in Austria, he applied for citizenship or a visa for the United States to come to the United States. Literally, as the Nazis are invading Austria, he gets granted asylum to come to the United States. He got it, but his family didn't. So literally, with this visa in hand to come to the United States, he chose to stay with his family. Within hours and days of him turning down coming to the United States and staying in Austria, he gets captured. Everything he has gets destroyed, taken, stolen, whatever you want to call it. His body of work that he'd been working on is basically destroyed in front of him. Everything he's built his whole entire life about putting together gets destroyed. He's then carted off to a concentration camp. And he endures the concentration camp. But Victor decides to do something a little bit different. He wasn't going to be a victim. He started studying what was happening around him. He says, I must be here for a reason. What can I learn from this? And it became his mission to actually understand what was happening in this concentration camp. He made two very, very important observations while he was in the concentration camp. First of all, the people that survived had meaning in their life. They had a reason to live. There was something important that drove them. So maybe it was a family member, or maybe it was just to survive, to be spiteful. But there was some meaning that they had. That meaning drove them to survive no matter what was thrown at them. The second portion that he learned from this experience is that it's how we respond to the circumstances in life that matters. So you may have heard people talk about only focus on the things you can control in life, because you can't control those other things. And I can control how I respond to how I'm treated. So one of the things I want to leave you with is that meaning. How do we find meaning in life? What makes us tick? Why do we do the things that we do? We talked about it at the corporate level. But as an individual level, do you have something? So in my life, I'll share with you what I look at. About 15 years ago, I went through an exercise. I was really studying leadership, and I did a whole thing. I decided what my vision for my life was going to be, what my purpose in life was, where I was going to get meaning, my core values. I did all those things. When I went through this exercise, the hardest thing for me to do was determine why I do what I do. As I sat back and I looked at all the things I ever wanted to be when I was a kid growing up, for a vocation, all the things that I did and got great joy, the things that I wanted to do that I failed miserably at, there was this one recurring theme that happened over and over from as far back as I can remember, is that I was always one of those people that was able to inspire people, to get people excited about themselves and where they wanted to be and what they wanted to do. I realized at that moment that my purpose in life was to help inspire people. I'd been doing it all along. I just didn't know it. I didn't do it intentionally. I just did it because it felt right at the moment. But once I understood that, I was able to take everything I do in my life, the business that we have, I reinvented our business and made it so that we actually inspired our employees, try to inspire our clients. Events like this got created to help continue that process. I don't have a day when I come into work where I feel like I hate the job, ever. I come in every day energized, knowing that we're going to have that positive impact. I'm going to inspire someone. So my challenge to you is, what makes you tick? What's going to drive you? What's going to give you that energy to go forward? What's going to give you meaning? What's going to make you fearless in life? Does anyone know what this picture is of? David, what is it? Tiananmen Square. Do you guys remember how long ago was this? Do you remember, roughly? What is it? Oh, that's very good. 1989, in China, there was a pro-democracy movement that was happening. Most of the students of the universities were leading this. And there was a showdown in Tiananmen Square between the pro-military forces and the government and these pro-democracy students. This turned out to be, it was on, I think it was June 4th, June 5th that it actually happened on. It became a massacre. These students stood up for what they believed was the right thing. They're willing to put their lives on the line. We've heard a couple people talk about making very difficult decisions. Dave Ramsden talking about the choice between some of his passions and family and having to make those hard choices. We've heard Charles Scott talk about some of the decisions he had to make in his life to actually spend more time with his family as well. When I think about this, it comes down to values. What do we value in life? What do we stand for? When we think about values and how we want to bring them to what we do on a day-to-day basis, are you willing to stand up and fight for what you believe in? Are you willing to die, potentially? If you're a parent, would you give your life to save your child's life? I would without hesitation. And I think most of us would. It's a sacrifice we'd be willing to make. We'd be willing to fight for that because we believe in it. And it's near and dear to us. So when I think about values and I think about this phase, what do we stand for? It's not just writing some words on a piece of paper, because anyone can do that. And we've all seen companies that have done that. How many people remember the Ford Motor Company, Ford Pinto? A nice little car, right? A nice little car if you want to get hit in the rear end and blow up, right? They did a cost and benefit analysis on whether or not they were going to actually stop the production of that car or let it roll forward. What decision did they make? Let the dice roll. We'd rather pay the claims than the cost to actually re-engineer this car and to pull it off the market. Do you think that's living in any kind of values? Take Johnson & Johnson on the other side of this equation. Johnson & Johnson in the 1980s, I forget exactly when it was, but it was in the early 80s. Their Tylenol product was tampered with. And there were like 3 bottles of Tylenol that were tampered with that caused deaths. How did Johnson & Johnson respond to that? They recalled every bottle of Tylenol back. Cost them tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. Is that actions of living in congruency with your values? Willing to stand for something. So what I would challenge you with, whether it's in the workplace and you look at your corporate values as a company, are you going to live those corporate values on a day-to-day basis? How about in your personal life? Do you have values that are just so important that you need to bring them to the forefront and live them on a day-to-day basis? Kind of like Dave Ramsden talked about with his family, and bring that to the forefront of what you need to do and make the hard decisions. And what do we do to make these values that we have live, be persistent, and align with everything we're doing in our life? So my question to you is, what are you willing to stand for? What are you willing to die for? Do we understand that? For me, this is kind of a very emotional slide. I do a lot of work with a program called Year Up. Year Up is a program that's designed for inner city youth. There's a number of offices and locations around the country: Boston, Providence, I think Philly, San Francisco, where they take these inner city youths, usually between the ages of 17 and 25, and what they do is they bring them into this program for 1 year, hence the name Year Up. 6 months of that program is focused on teaching them a skill. They help them become professional. They give them life coaching. They help them manage just the things that most of us take for granted, like how to manage a checkbook. They also start to teach them a vocation. They teach a couple of different vocations. The first one they teach is help desk, how to actually work in a help desk environment. The second vocation is PC, computer repair kind of environments. So they go through this intensive training program for 6 months. And they teach them self-confidence. They teach them how to present. They teach them how to communicate both verbally and written in a much stronger level. They start to teach them about being accountable. They teach them all these other skills besides just the vocational skills. Then at the 6-month point, they get them a 6-month intern with an organization that becomes kind of their program. I support this program here in Providence very much. I do Leadership Challenge training for them every year. So we take about 80 of their students every year. We bring them to a 2-day workshop where we teach them how to become stronger leaders. We talk about purpose and meaning. We talk about values. We talk about creating vision for their lives. We help them kind of think about themselves as being someone that's not the victim anymore in life, but someone that can become stronger and take control of what they're doing. I met this woman, Dominique Fernandez, at the Europe program. I wasn't her mentor, but she went through my Leadership Challenge program. And when I saw her for the first time, she had a spark about her. She had an energy. Then I had the opportunity to see her at her graduation ceremony. She gave the opening presentation to the entire audience of about 100 people. Most of them her students and classmates, but there were business professionals there that were supporting them. There were mentors there that were supporting them. Her presentation started off, and she gives a date. And that date, when she gives a date, she says, I was born addicted to crack cocaine. Her life started with every reason to fail, to not be successful. She then bounced around from home to home to home to home, not having a stable environment until she was 17. She was 19 at the time, and for the last year, she was bouncing between friends' homes and family members' homes with no permanent place. She finally ends up homeless on the street and gets selected to come into the Year Up program. And while she was Year Up, she would go to class every day from 8:30 to 3:30. And when she left the Year Up program, she had to walk around the city of Providence until 5 o'clock so she could check into a homeless shelter. And she completed the program. So some of you may remember in Gillette Stadium, if you were at our last Always On in Gillette Stadium, she was actually part of the presentation I delivered. When I look at Dominique, I think she represents an element that is amazing with people. First of all, she was resilient. She had every reason to say, I could be a victim in life. No one would have questioned it. None of us in this room, hopefully, were ever born addicted to crack cocaine. Hopefully, most of us had stable household families that helped us raise. She had every excuse to say, I'm just going to be part of the system. I'm going to be a part of the problem with our society. But she chose not to do that. She chose to pick herself up. She chose to take control of her life. She chose to do the hard things. She became accountable. She was never a victim. She was completely accountable for everything she did. She graduated Year Up. She presented here in front of our audience. She got a job. And she's now moving up the corporate ladder. She's probably on her 2nd or 3rd promotion by now with the organizations you're working for. So the question to you and to all of us, we're talking about amazing people. How can I become amazing? What can I do? And I think the number one thing that we all can do is be accountable for ourselves. We talk about accountability in our lives as punishment. You didn't do this, so something happens. But accountability is nothing about that. I believe accountability is taking our lives, looking at them, no matter what's thrown at us, we always achieve. We always get the outcomes we choose for, no matter what happens, and we're never the victim. Dominique is a young woman I learned a lot from during this process. I think if you saw her presentation, you understand how emotional it was and how powerful it was. And she, by the way, she was scared to death doing this presentation in front of you grown-ups, as Amanda Palmer would say. Has anyone ever had someone in your life that had an impact on you? Was it a parent, a relative, a teacher, a mentor? Sometimes in life, we have people that come into our lives that change our trajectory a little bit. Sometimes we never notice it. Sometimes we don't even see it happening. And what happens is 10 years down the road, when you have a moment to reflect on where you are and how you got there, it dawns on you this moment, this point that you never really thought about, changed everything about you. Does anyone in the room have something that happened like that? Whether it was a business professional that helped you, a parent. I refer to this concept of how we interact with people. I call it opening the doors. How do we as individuals open the doors for people? There's a video that went around on Facebook not long ago. This video shows a young kid who had a really tough time after his father passed away. He was in high school. And he was emotionally distraught over the fact that his father died at such a young age, at a young age, and left him fatherless. Well, other kids looked at this and they didn't see strength in that. They saw a weakness. And he became the butt of the joke. He became picked on. He became bullied by his fellow classmates, his peers. And he became an outcast within his own school. He stood alone. He ate alone. He walked the halls alone. Well, one day his mother decides that she needs to move. They need to move for economic reasons, and they moved to the inner city, from the suburbs to the inner city. They really had no choice. This kid, like a Dominique, could have been a victim and just carried all the things that happened into this new school. But he chose to do something different. His first day of school, he goes to the school, and as people are starting to go into the building, he goes over and he holds the door open for all his fellow classmates to come in. And every time he went through, no matter where there was a door that he held open for all his classmates to pass through. And he smiled at them, he greeted them, and he said hello to them. He did this day in and day out. He then soon became the person in the organization that everyone was excited about seeing every day. He was the one consistent portion in one specific element in their lives that was consistent day in and day out. He became accepted. He became part of the group. He finally felt like he belonged. And the teams that the students that he held the door open for, and the teachers that held him open, wanted him to be part of everything that they did. So my question to you is, who do you open the doors for? Who are you reaching out to touch? I love this picture because when I think about those people in your lives that touch you, I think one of the most important jobs and roles in our life is someone that's going to be an educator, a teacher, a mentor. Because that's when we can have the greatest impact. I love this picture here for two reasons. Number one, it is talking about educating and opening the doors because we're opening people's minds. We're making them think. We're making them think about themselves in a different way. But I love where this person is sitting. He's not in front of the classroom. He's not lecturing. He's sitting down at their level. And I think when we think about how we actually interact with people, it's about engaging at their level. Being able to be on par with people and communicate with them in a way that resonates with them. So I would challenge you, the next time you walk into a restaurant and you sit down and the waiter or waiter greets you, greet them by name. Actually talk to them, engage with them. You walk into a convenience store in the state of Rhode Island where they never greet you and they never look at you. Force them to engage with you. Open the door. Have an impact on those people's lives around you. So I want to leave you on one final note. We had an awesome day today. We talked about culture. We talked about the 5 pillars that make up culture, focusing on creating vision, building purpose and meaning in our organizations, establishing core values that we can make better decisions around. We talked about how to be amazing and how to be resilient. And last but not least, we talked about creating wow experiences. What I want you to walk away from here today thinking about is that you have the ability to have an impact on your companies at every level. It doesn't matter if it's your first day with this company. It doesn't matter if you've been there for 20 years. It doesn't matter if you're at the highest possible position, the CEO, or you're the front desk receptionist, the shipping receiving clerk. You have the ability to change the course of your organization. So go forward, be culture, be part of it, drive it, and remember that you are culture. So thank you. Have a great night.